The iPhone 17 Pro is Apple's newest flagship phone. It's got a brand new unibody chassis carved from a single piece of aluminium, and combined with a new vapor chamber for cooling, it should allow the phone to perform better for longer. The telephoto lens has also been upgraded from a 12 megapixel to a 48 megapixel sensor, but it's been reduced from 5 to just 4 times zoom. And the selfie camera has, for the first time in 6 years, gotten a huge upgrade. But what does all that mean in practice? And is there really that big of a difference compared to last year's top model, the iPhone 16 Pro? I'll be testing that in this video, where I'll also give you the answer to why the regular iPhone 17 is actually this year's best buy. The price for the cheapest iPhone 17 Pro is a little bit higher than it was for the iPhone 16 Pro, but on the other hand, the phone now comes with 256 gigabytes of storage as standard. On the iPhone 16 Pro, that would make it more expensive than what you have to pay today. So if you need the storage space, well, then the iPhone 17 Pro has actually become a little bit cheaper. The biggest difference compared to last year's phone is the new chassis and the new camera bump, or plateau as Apple would like us to call it. It now spans the entire width of the phone, and before I got the phone, I have to admit I was pretty skeptical. In the leaks that had been out, I thought it looked ridiculous. But after getting the phone in my hands, I have to admit that it actually works quite well, and I've grown to really like the design. I also like the new rounded edges that the unibody chassis provides. It makes the phone more comfortable to hold in your hand compared to my iPhone 16 Pro. But the new chassis is unfortunately also a bit more slippery, so the phone slips out of your hands more easily compared to last year's model. On the other hand, you could say that if you use a case on your phone, then it doesn't really matter. I also like that it's now a smaller area on the back of the phone that's made of glass, or in this case what Apple calls ceramic shield, which is a reinforced glass material. I imagine that it's far more durable, both because it covers a much smaller area, and also because it doesn't go all the way to the edge like it does on the other iPhones, and there's therefore less risk of it hitting something if you drop the phone. And while we're on the subject of glass, the front has also gotten an upgrade that's actually more than just marketing talk. Apple itself says that the new Ceramic Shield 2, which the phone's screen now uses, is 3 times more resistant to scratches. How they arrive at that 3 times figure, I don't know, but the fact is that this year's screen is actually measurably improved compared to before. The YouTube channel, Jerry Rig Everything, always tests the latest iPhones by scratching the screen with tools calibrated to different hardness levels. And where all iPhones in recent years have shown light scratches at level 6 with deeper grooves at level 7, well, the new iPhones have moved up a step and you now have to go all the way to level 8 to make a deep scratch. The screen has also gotten a new anti-reflective coating that's supposed to reduce glare compared to before, but even though you can see a difference compared to my iPhone 16 Pro, the reflections are not completely gone. The new screen type, which by the way is on all the new iPhones, has also become brighter. It can now reach up to 3000 nits in strong sunlight, whereas the iPhone 16 Pro could only go up to 2000. But even though a jump from 2 to 3000 nits sounds like a lot, I don't think there's a huge difference when you compare the two phones. The bigger news this year is that you now get the same great screen on all the phones. So even the regular iPhone 17 now has the same screen as the Pro models. And while we're on the topic of the screen, it also houses one of this year's other major upgrades, the selfie camera. For the last 6 years, it has had a resolution of 12 megapixels, but this year we've finally gotten a new sensor that delivers images of up to 18 megapixels. The sensor itself is 24 megapixels, but as a new feature, it's square, which means it can deliver those 18 megapixels in both orientations, so you can take both portrait and landscape photos without having to turn the phone. You can switch between the two formats on the screen, and the pictures have the same resolution no matter which you choose. You can also activate automatic zoom and rotation, so the phone itself keeps an eye on how many people are in front of the camera, and then adjust the crop to include everyone. However, you should be aware that to use the automatic zoom, the camera starts with a tighter crop, and you only get a 7 megapixel image from that. You only get the full 18 megapixels in the widest crop. However, It's the same thing that happens on the iPhone 16 Pro, where you also have two crops. Here, it's also only the wide crop that gives you the maximum 12 megapixels that phone can deliver. The tighter crop gives a 7 megapixel image, just like on the iPhone 17 Pro, but I think the image from the 17 Pro is much nicer. The skin tones are more natural, and if we zoom in to 400%, the image is also cleaner and more natural than the one from the 16 Pro. It seems like the 16 Pro's image has had a bit more sharpening added to try to make details stand out more, whereas the image from the 17 Pro looks much more natural. Here's a picture taken with the widest crop. As you can see, you get significantly more in the picture on the iPhone 17 Pro compared to last year's phone. Besides a wider field of view, you also, as I said, get an 18 megapixel image instead of the 12 megapixels that the 16 Pro can deliver. If I zoom into 400% on the image from the 16 Pro, I therefore have to zoom into 500% on the iPhone 17 Pro to get the same crop. But even though I'm zooming 20% more digitally, the image from the 17 Pro still looks nicer than on the 16 Pro. It might look like there are a few more details in the image from the 16 Pro, but I think it's the extra sharpening that's deceiving. In any case, I think the image from the iPhone 17 Pro is much more natural to look at. Another thing that's significantly improved is the image stabilization when you're recording video with the selfie camera. Just look at the background here and notice how it jumps and dances on the iPhone 16 Pro but not on the 17 Pro. A pretty significant improvement, I must say, and with the 17 Pro I also have the advantage of being able to film in both portrait and landscape format while holding the phone vertically. I can just stop the recording, switch the orientation by tapping the screen, and then continue recording landscape video in full 4K quality without having to turn the phone. If you use the selfie camera a lot, the iPhone 17 Pro is therefore definitely worth the upgrade. But just like with the screen, you actually get the same great selfie camera in the regular iPhone 17, which is 25% cheaper. One thing you don't get in the regular iPhone 17, however, is the telephoto lens. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the other two cameras. In the 17 Pro, they are actually the same ones that are in the iPhone 16 Pro and also the ones that were in the iPhone 15 Pro. But I've seen in the past that Apple has been able to improve image quality in software using the phone's newer processors, so I was a bit curious to see if I could see a difference this year compared to the iPhone 16 Pro. But at first glance, there isn't a big difference in the images from the primary camera, not even if I enlarge them 400%. In this picture, taken with 2x zoom, which still uses the primary lens but crops to the middle 12 megapixels on the sensor, it looks like there might be slightly better noise reduction on the 17 Pro if you look at the planter on the left side of the image. But other than that, I don't think there's a big difference. And there isn't on the ultra-wide camera either, whether you use it normally for wide-angle shots or for macro photos. The regular iPhone 17 also has both a 1x and an ultra-wide camera, just like the iPhone 17 Pro, but with slightly different specifications. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to test the iPhone 17, but its primary camera is the same one that's in the iPhone Air. And when I tested that against the iPhone 17 Pro, I couldn't see a huge difference in quality either. In night mode, the 17 Pro could deliver a few more details in the very dark areas, but overall, there was no significant difference. So again, you can get almost the same performance in the regular iPhone as you can in the Pro model. And maybe you're starting to see a bit of a theme when it comes to this year's lineup of iPhones. One thing you don't get in the regular iPhone 17, however, is the telephoto lens, which this year has gotten a 48 megapixel sensor compared to the iPhone 16 Pro's 12 megapixel. But not only has it gotten more megapixels, it's also significantly larger, as you can see in this teardown. On the other hand, the optical lens is now only at 4x zoom, whereas in the 16 Pro, it was at 5x. In practice, however, it seems that the 4x zoom combined with the larger and better sensor is a much better solution. If you zoom in less than what the telephoto lens can deliver, both phones use the primary camera, which they then crop digitally. And it works okay at twice the zoom, but after that, the quality drops. And because the iPhone 16 Pro also uses the regular camera at 4x zoom, it cannot keep up with the iPhone 17 Pro, which uses the optical zoom lens instead. Try to notice the sign in the background of this picture. The surprising thing is that even at 5 times zoom, where the iPhone 16 Pro doesn't need to digitally crop the image, unlike the 17 Pro, the quality on the iPhone 17 Pro is actually still better. At 8 times zoom, which Apple calls optical quality on the iPhone 17 Pro because it can use the sensor's middle 12 megapixels to double the range. We again see that the quality is much better than on the 16 Pro, even though the 17 Pro again has to crop the image digitally more than the 16 Pro. The 48 megapixels clearly make a big difference. They also give the iPhone 17 Pro a digital zoom range that is greater than its predecessor. The iPhone 16 Pro can zoom up to a maximum of 25 times in photo mode, where the iPhone 17 Pro can zoom up to 40 times. Here you can see both phones at 25 times zoom, and although it is quite clear that there is a digital zoom on both phones, the image from the 17 Pro is still better. Here are some other examples. At 4 times zoom there is no comparison, but even at the higher zoom ranges, the iPhone 17 Pro continuously produces a better and sharper image with more detail. And if you compare the maximum zoom range on the two phones, that is, 25 times on the iPhone 16 Pro and 40 times on the iPhone 17 Pro, it is interesting to see that the new phone actually still delivers more detail, even though it is zoomed in significantly further. See for example the year on the glass here. It is illegible on the iPhone 16 Pro at 25 times zoom, but even at the 40 times zoom on the iPhone 17 Pro, it is still visible quite clearly. In video mode, the iPhone 17 Pro can also zoom further than the iPhone 16 Pro can, 24 times against the 16's 15, and that gives you a pretty impressive range when you go from ultra-wide and then to maximum digital zoom. And again, the 17 Pro delivers better quality with a little more detail, even though the range is much greater. I've also tested the cameras in low light, and when the phones use night mode, there's actually not much difference between them, not even on the telephoto lens. In night mode, the processing matters so much that it seems like the iPhone 17 Pro's larger sensor doesn't make a huge difference, but if you turn night mode off, the difference becomes just as clear as in broad daylight. At 4 times zoom, the 17 Pro is of course superior because the 16 Pro again has to use the primary camera, but even at higher zooms, the 17 Pro maintains its lead and delivers sharper images with better noise reduction. So there is no doubt that the new telephoto lens is a huge plus compared to the previous models, and not only provides extra zoom range, but also delivers much better quality, even when zooming in more than you can on the iPhone 16 Pro. I was also curious to see how much of a difference the new vapor chamber in the iPhone 17 Pro makes compared to the 16 Pro. Of course, the new A19 Pro processor is faster than last year's A18 Pro, but really only about 13% in single-core CPU performance and a little under 11% in multi-core. On the other hand, it seems the graphics processor has received a significant boost. It's a full 42% faster than last year's chip when I tested in Geekbench 6. When I ran the Solar Bay Extreme stress test in my review of the iPhone Air, which runs the same 1-minute loop 20 times, it was clear that the iPhone 17 Pro was much better at handling heat from the processor and therefore could maintain higher performance for longer. But compared to the iPhone 16 Pro, the difference is significantly smaller. You can still see that the iPhone 17 Pro's performance drops more slowly than the 16 Pro's, which actually hits its lowest score by the end of the first loop. Here, the iPhone 17 Pro's score drops more continuously over the 20 minutes, but the difference isn't quite as significant as what I saw with the iPhone Air. It's also interesting to see that the iPhone 17 Pro's lowest score isn't that far below the iPhone 16 Pro's highest, simply because the graphics processor has received such a big boost this year. In day-to-day use, however, you won't notice any difference between the phones. But if you, for example, use your phone to record ProRes video, you will definitely experience better performance on the iPhone 17 Pro. And the same goes if you game on the phone. But is it worth upgrading to? Well, if you use the telephoto lens or the selfie camera often, I'd say yes, because as you can see in my examples, both are significantly improved in the iPhone 17 Pro, even compared to last year's top model. If you're coming from an older phone, the difference is of course even bigger, but that's also pretty much the only new thing. Yes, the screen is a bit better and much more resistant to scratches, and I actually quite like the new design. But honestly, other than that, there's not much new. The processor is of course faster, which is to be expected, not least when it comes to graphics performance, which is actually much faster than you might expect. But unless you're gaming on your phone, you won't notice any difference in regular use compared to the iPhone 16 Pro. If you're coming from an iPhone 15 or an iPhone 14 Pro or older, you'll also get access to Apple Intelligence with the new phones. But so far you are not missing out on much when it comes to Apple's AI offerings. They really don't deliver anything essential. That might change over time, but for now it's just an extra bonus with the newer phones. Not a must-have. If you don't care about the telephoto lens, but still want a new phone, the regular iPhone 17 is actually the best buy this year, because apart from the third lens, it's now virtually identical to the Pro phones. It has the same great screen with promotion, meaning the fast refresh rate, always on, and up to 3000 nits of brightness. It has the same great selfie camera, and it comes standard with the same 256GB of storage. And even though the processor is only called A19 and not A19 Pro, and the phone has 8GB of RAM instead of 12, well, that's not something you'll notice a difference in during everyday use. Another minor limitation is that the iPhone 17 only supports USB 2 via the wired connection, but unless you often use a cabled connection to transfer large files to and from the phone to some device that runs at a speed faster than USB 2, well, it doesn't really make a difference. The Pro phones this year are therefore more for true professionals who need to shoot photos in ProRAW format or record ProRes video, because you can't do that on the regular iPhones. I do neither of those, but I wouldn't want to be without the telephoto lens, so I think it's awesome that it's gotten so much better this year. But if it weren't for that, yeah, I probably would have just grabbed the regular 17. Or maybe not, but that's really just because I'm a tech nerd. Objectively speaking, the regular iPhone 17 is this year's best deal, but I certainly don't regret buying my 17 Pro. By the way, if you've heard rumors that the phones scratch easily, well, I've had mine for almost a month, and it still has no scratches, even though I use it without a case. But of course, I also don't just throw it in pockets or bags with keys, coins, or other hard things, so I'm not guaranteeing anything. I can only tell you about my own experiences. If you want to see more from my channel, YouTube has found another video for you right there. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, I'm always grateful for a cup of coffee. Also, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and otherwise I'll just say, see you soon.